Title of Friday's. The title of Friday's presentation is Individual Opportunities During the Pandemic from the Perspective of Social Work. There are different ways we can look at opportunities, different ways we can understand what's going on with the pandemic, but now we're gonna look at it from the perspective of social work. Welcome, Friday. Be blessed.
Good afternoon, Dr. Franklin. Good afternoon, Dr. Edward. Good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon, fellow participants. You are welcome to this conference. It is my privilege and opportunity to be here once again. I think this is the second time I'm opportune to be a presenter. Like Dr. Franklin has said, I hope are we hearing me, please?
I can hear you very well,
Okay,
Friday.
great.
We are asking everybody else to please mute your microphone. Let's let Friday continue.
I will be looking at it from social work perspective. Of course, there are various opportunities that are banned. People took this pandemic, they brought something out of it. But there were also others who decided to mourn, who decided to complain, who decided to say that the end has come. But there were those who looked at it and said, in every challenges of life, there are always opportunities.
Yes.
So I'm coming from that angle, a bit from the perspective of social work. We first of all look at the introduction.
If I may stop you for a quick, okay, there we go. Go ahead, Friday.
So let's quickly look at the introduction. There was an unwanted visitor in the late 2019. This unwanted visitor visited the city of Wuhan in the Republic of China. This visitor was so devastating. It caused a lot of problems, deaths, what have you. It caused economic crisis. And the Republic of China pool all their resources together and see how to contain this unwanted visitor. And the name of that visitor is C19, popularly known as COVID-19 virus. Moving away from Wuhan, this virus in a rapid form moved faster like a wild wind, traveling or moving to other countries of the world, causing havoc, causing deaths. In Nigeria, where I came from, ladies and gentlemen, we recorded a case of cases of 164,303. Out of these, 154,000 were discharged, while death recorded was 2,061. Initially, there seemed to be no cure for this pandemic. There seemed to be no medical answer to it. But as time goes on, we can see that people are beginning to develop vaccines and people are getting cured. This pandemic, so devastating, cost over 2 million lives. The loss of over 2 million lives across the globe. You can see that it was so devastating. Nobody wished to go through this kind of situation. Albeit this pandemic, we had a similar case in the year 1918, and it was known as influenza pandemic. I think history would have done better, or if people had actually followed the path of history, they would have been able to quickly, as much as possible, plan remedy, plan how to mitigate it from spreading more than the way it did. This pandemic results in business shutdown. A lot of businesses were shut down. What about disruption of business and processes? Organization could not curtail it any longer. Some resorted into pay cuts. Are you ready as a staff of my organization to accept 50% pay cuts? If you are not ready, this is the door, you can go. So that is what the pandemic brought to the world. There were health, attendant, and economic crisis. Most economies were brought to a halt, almost to a halt. Governments were not finding it easy. Organizations, individuals were all affected. And this led to restructuring and leanness of organization. Organization looked at it and said, there is no way we can continue to survive if we do not think up to the boss. We got to do restructuring. We got to lean down our organization. Some staff were asked to go, even though it was not their wish. But some organizations look at it that this is the only way we can survive. So restructuring came into being for most of organization, and their staff strengths were also reduced. Next slide, please. Next slide, Dr. Lambert. Now, we have individuals, we have stakeholders that were affected by this pandemic. These stakeholders include the following: individuals, organizations such as schools, businesses, hospitals, groups, government, society, international and non-governmental organizations. As individuals, our right for freedom of association, freedom of movement was impeded upon. Albeit it was as a result to ensure that life is preserved, to ensure that those who were not affected at that time didn't get affected. Restrictions were announced by various governments. I, as individual, I could not associate any longer the way I could have done. I couldn't go to a place of worship any longer, and I have to be working from home remotely. And that is one of the reason, or one of the good things of thinking out of the box. We cannot shut down, but let's work remotely. Groups, a lot of groups were also affected. Various governments, for instance, economies of various governments were affected, not only in Nigeria, but across the globe. That shows how serious that pandemic. That showed the seriousness of the pandemic. It was indeed devastating. Society. We have various society, but they could not function the way they should have. Restrictions. There were flight restrictions. There were vehicular restrictions. People were banned from traveling across a particular state, for instance, in Nigeria. Why did the government have to do that? It in the bid to curtail the spread. International and non-governmental organizations like WHO, UNICEF, Red Cross Society, who could have traveled to other places to carry out their functions. They could not, because why? There were flight restrictions. Next slide, please. So this led to paradigm of change. Now it is no longer news that the pandemic has come to stay. What do we then need to do? Do we continue to complain? Do we continue to fold our hands? That brought about reflection on the way to move forward. What do we need to do differently? We must have to think out of the box. And this led to a surge of creativity for change. People began to think, to be creative on new way of doing things, moving from the normal to the new normal. We have to get ourselves acclimatized to some of the things that we were not used to before now. And that led to power of technology. The role that technology played during this pandemic cannot be overemphasized. Many schools were closed down. Howbeit, lectures continue online. Students were kept busy. Assignments were being given. Organization devised means for their staff to be working from home. Even as I speak, many organizations, their staff are still working from home. And that is the power of technology. So in the age in which we are, nobody can afford to lag behind in terms of technology. We have to get ourselves abreast to the latest so that we can be fit into the society. Otherwise, we'll be left behind. Ideas of yesterday is not sufficient for today's problem. And that is why it is necessary that you have to keep thinking. You have to keep thinking, what do I do next? Innovative ideas came aboard for new businesses and jobs. And then unlocking of opportunities. One of our presenters spoke about opportunities. You look for a new opportunity that you can exploit. You don't have to be redundant. Put on your inelastic garment. I repeat, put on your inelastic garment and move forward. Explore into the future and see what you can do better. Unlocking of new markets as well as recognition of new needs. If you are able to think out of the box, you will discover that in this era of pandemic, there are new markets and there are new recognition of new needs. In Nigeria, for instance, where I come from, we discovered that people began to be producing a lot of things, PPEs, sanitizers, what have you, nose masks, because they saw the needs that this present pandemic, what will I do? They discovered the market and they saw the need, they move, they conquer, and they gain. Unlocking of new ways of doing things. Like I said, we can no longer be dogmatic about ways of doing things. We have to move forward. We cannot say this is the way we used to do it. No, come on with a new idea, a new vision, so that you can fit into the present situation. Now, implication for social workers. Now, this is where social worker is affected. What is the implication? Dr. Lambert, you can please move to the next slide. Okay, implications. What is new? Engaging in collaboration with other social workers and medical experts. The social workers saw the need to collaborate, the need for engagement, the need to chart a new way of doing things. They saw, they saw the collaboration, the cooperation of other social workers and medical experts. For instance, as a social worker who is doing counseling, for instance, you need somebody who is a clinical psychology to cooperate with. You have to collaborate with such individual so that you'll be able to carry out your own job very well. As a social worker, if you want to counsel a female patient, you equally need the presence of a female social workers so that there could be balance, so that you will be able, that patient can open up. The patient may not necessarily want to open up to you because you are a man. But when she see a female social worker, she has that confidence to open up. Then building and exploring the community approach. Very important. Social workers, what do? You have to build and explore the community approach. Go into the community, extend your services, come up with new approach. Remember that we have community of social workers. Collaborate with them. Let's explore together. Let's come together. They can even, build a kind of, isolation centers. By so doing, what are they? They are collaborating, then engaging in entrepreneurship. The work of entrepreneurship, it is to explore. It is to think out of the box. It is to look for a way to solve problem. It is to look for a solution to better a problem that have been on ground. So engaging entrepreneurship approach, very important. Then adopting resilience. You must have that spirit to defy the odds. You will not say, because people are dying of this pandemic, I want to stay behind. No, have that spirit of resilience. I happen in my family to have medical workers. My wife, my son, they all work in government hospitals. And every day they come back home, they tell me stories of how people are being infected and how some of their colleagues are dying. Because I'm a social worker, I have to encourage them. Come on, move on. We got to save life. Don't allow the death that is happening to affect your service to humanity. When you are in a medical line, you have to provide service to humanity. Move on. Thank God they listen. They move on and they were providing these services daily and saving lives. Then recognition of a new role in the society. For social worker, it is very important that your role in the society is now very, very important. Unlike before the pandemic, your role is very important in terms of advisory role, consultancy role, in terms of reaching out to the underprivileged, reaching out to those who don't even have the wherewithal to access medical facility, you play a new role. So social workers suddenly become bride in the society, became people that government has sought after. So they provide advice to governments, and that is the new role, and they play that role absolutely well. What were the opportunities that were open to the social worker? This leads us to the next slide. Many opportunities came aboard. There are always opportunities, but it takes somebody with the right mindset to discover these opportunities. It takes somebody who have that ability to think outside the box to discover that there are opportunities. Out of every problem, you have to find opportunities out of it. And that is what the social worker did. Production, marketing, distribution, and sale of nose masks, temperature taking. They discover pandemic is around. What do I do? They collaborate. They went into production of nose masks, PPE, sanitizer. They pull fund together. And before you know it, you saw a lot of advertorial on the internet on what you can do and how to actually tackle this pandemic. Sanitizer, gloves, and disinfectants. There were those who were engaged in local sanitizer and disinfectants. And of course, they make gain out of it because they went into production and sales, and people were patronizing them. Let me tell you this. Tailors suddenly became nose mask producers locally. They were sewing it, and people were buying it. You know, even though some didn't bother to check, this nose mask I'm buying from this tailor, will it really have effects? Of course, they just want to put something in their nose to show that, yes, I went out, I use nose mask. Very interesting. Then research into consumables that can fortify the immune system against COVID-19 and related diseases. Locally, the social worker did a lot of research, going into ginger, lemon, and mixing them together and packaging them in a way that it looks, attractive. And of course, we had a lot of stories, testimony as well. People say that when you mix ginger with hot water and all that it works. We saw them in the video, and they capitalized on it, and they went into the production. And they also have the opportunities for packaging this product in a new way, taking into cognizance the health protocols. What they did is, even though I am producing this product locally, but I got to package it in a way that there will not be health hazard to the people. They did it in such a way, giving instruction, usage instruction, the doses per day, and lives move on. I go to the next. Opportunities for social workers continue. Platform and content development for health instruction, delivery, and creation. What should we do? They they created platform. That platform contained content relating to health issues, to health instructions, to health deliveries, and how people can actually prevent the pandemic. And those who were affected already, what they need to do to overcome it, what they need to do to ensure that the spread is curtailed, even though it was not a palatable experience because family were separated, husband separated from the wife, from the children, but all for the good of the entire family. Which one is better? To have a member of the family isolated, or to have every day, or to have the entire family, infected? You can see that there is a great difference. So that platform that they went into with other social workers, the content is what I've just told you. Then they also went into advisory role.
Manage it richly and poor have nothing to say, so that
Please, can you mute your device?
For this, and people turn to be test to.
Please, can you mute your device? You can ask your
Yes,
question after
we would
the
like again to ask everybody to mute your microphone, please, so that our presenter can continue his conference. Thank you very much for your cooperation.
Thank you, Dr. Franklin. Advisory roles or consultancies. I told us earlier on that social worker suddenly became the bride in the society. People were, seeking after their advisory role. And they help to advise various organizations, various government processes, and they went into consultancy because they are social workers. They want to ensure that they provide such an advice that will prevent the pandemic from further spreading. Then they also went into preventive role for the vulnerable, the aged, the children, and the women. The social worker ensure that the preventive role, telling the aged one, always ensure that you put on something to cover yourself. Don't allow cold to penetrate into your body. Use warm water to bathe. All those are preventive rule. Put on, make sure you put on nose mask, wear your hands gloves, put on your PPEs. So before now, they don't know about all this, but the social worker see it as opportunity to actually delve into preventive role by telling those who are vulnerable. They even went as far as going into the communities where the people over there do not have government access. They were playing advisory role, preventive role, and it actually helped them. Sometimes ago, I read something from the internet. In a particular community, people were using leaves as nose man. It was as bad as that. That means such community is totally cut off from government presence. So the social workers ensure that they went into rural areas, into the various communities to ensure that they do their job, and they did it absolutely well. Now, efforts at reducing health risks in rural areas. Of course, like I said, the rural areas, at times they don't have government presence. So the social workers has a role to play. The social worker don't have to wait. He has to identify problems. A social worker do not wait for problem to come. He identify where there is problem and profile solution. So going into the rural areas where they do not have government presence, they told them this is what you should do. Don't expose the children. Ensure that you wear no mask. So the little they have, they distributed. There was even an instance where they came together and formed alliance and went into a particular community to carry out the work so that the people that were neglected by government officials could have the benefits of knowing what to do and how to reduce the health risks and implication. Then advocacy role. You see, there are a lot of people that were under depression. There was this case, and this is why I said that the role of a social worker is very important. Some students gain admission into the university, for instance, to read medicine, and they left home rejoicing that I'm going into the university to read medicine. The parents were happy. They took their word to the school and they waved each other bye-bye, bye-bye mom, bye-bye dad, see you later. Only for those students to be told, sorry, we cannot give you medicine. It's either you go and read psychology, you go and read something else. The depression that happened to such students cannot be quantified. And that is why you have cases of suicide. Because they see, how will I go back home and tell my dad that I'm not reading medicine any longer? Some were depressed, totally depressed. They were not concentrating and they were contemplating on going into suicide. So these cases were discovered. We sat them down and tell them, look, when there is life, there is hope. You don't have to take your life. So a social worker will then advocate, go to the government and say, you must do something about the educational system so that people will not be denied of their right to good education. When I mean right to good education, I pass to read medicine. I pass to read law. Why are you giving me something else? It is my right to read what I want. There are those who are under the bridges. That is where they sleep and who do not value life any longer. And when you have such in the society, you can imagine what they can do because they do not value life. They can take anybody's life as well. So it is the role of the social worker to play an advocacy role on behalf of such individuals. Supportive roles for those who were affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. That leads to the next slide now. Supportive role. supporting those, okay, Dr. Lambert has not changed the slide. Next slide, please. Hello, Dr. Lambert. Next slide.
Yes,
Maybe
Friday.
is having challenges in changing to the next slide.
Okay, you may try to continue as there might be some kind of technical difficulty indeed. So just try to elaborate on everything that you've said so far. And also let me remind you, Friday, we only have about 20 minutes to go. If there is any way you could wrap up your presentation in the next 5 minutes, so
Yes,
that
I'll do
students
that.
can ask questions about your presentation. They certainly have questions.
I'm almost done. So
all right, thank you.
Supporting role to the local communities, families, those groups who were marginalized, and the impoverished groups as well. So it is the role that the social worker has to play. Some family were depressed, but social worker has to play supportive role. Implication for other individual, caregiving, development of new apps for service operation. This brought about batch of new social way of doing things. Then inquest into creativity and innovation, developing welfare project for rural, communities, leveraging on technology for operation, then strategic thinking. We got to think strategically. What do we need to do differently? Then the new challenge for the social worker. Number one, need to explore multi-skilling and multitasking. Remote working. You must learn how to work remotely from home. Be used to technology. Taking services and products to the people. Identify with the community of individuals who share similar interests for mankind. Conclusion, the pandemic calls for the following: resilience, strategy agility, paradigm shift, new methodologies of doing things, focus on gaps or problems as opportunities, then projection into the future. Ladies and gentlemen, it is important to conclude at this point that the emergence of the pandemic opened up a new opportunity to learn new ways of handling epidemic crisis management. It gave insight into the application of health protocols and promotion of health management, preventive strategy. Social workers were in the forefront with other health workers. It challenged their resilience and capacity to absorb new knowledge. The pandemic has changed ways of doing things, so it has provided an opportunity for social workers to innovate in their approach to service delivery. There arose opportunities for collaboration, affiliation, and linkage. Social work becomes more effective where linkage and collaboration are exploited. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your rapt attention.
Thank you very much. It's Friday Imoluamen. You've done a very good presentation. This time I would appreciate you turn off your presentation so that the attendees can see each other. Thank you very much. You've done the very right thing. Outstanding work as well, Friday. Pretty much like Friday explained, social workers are certainly at the forefront, at the vanguard position of everything that has to be done during and after the pandemic. everything that has to be done in terms of production, in terms of advertising, teaching people what to think about the problem and how to handle it, what kind of behavior to adopt at home on the streets and going to certain venues where people can still gather. At the forefront of these spectrum of actions, we find the social workers. So at this point, I don't want to talk too much. We only have exactly 16 minutes to go. We would like to dedicate that time to questions that you, the attendees, would like to ask the presenter, Friday Imoluamen. I see two hands up. Let's begin first with Eduardo Viana. If you have a question, you're ready, just go ahead, Eduardo.
Good afternoon again, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Friday, for your insightful presentation. And thank you because the social work is very important in general, but into a pandemic context, it is especially important. So thank you for your social, thank you to be a social worker, and thank you for every job you of this area make to help us. Here in Brazil, pandemic, it's very terrible problem. We have more than 3,000 deaths daily, more than 3,000 deaths daily. And the government need to help the poorest people, the impoverished groups to avoid these deaths. I want to know, please, let us know what exactly Nigeria government do to help the impoverished groups in your country. Thank you for your insightful presentation.
Thank you. If I hear you well, you said what did the Nigeria government did to do what?
If I can rephrase the question Eduardo was asking Friday, what is it that the government of your country, Nigeria, is doing to help the most disadvantaged people who have no resources, no way to go, nowhere to ask, etc.? What is the position of the government to help those people out?
Thank you, Dr. Vaux. Exactly.
Thank you very much. Speaking from the perspective of Nigeria government, what they did or what they are currently still doing, Nigeria has the ministry known as Ministry of Social Welfare, which is dedicated to helping those who are underprivileged. There is even a policy of this present government that certain amount is given out monthly to those who are who fell under this category, and they are monitoring the effectiveness, and they are getting feedback to see how effective is this policy. It is about coming up with a policy, identify the problem, then come up with solution. The government has to make policy pronouncement that addresses that challenge. And there is also what is called policy implementation. When the pronouncement is made, when the policy is made, then the government has to execute. In executing it, they do follow up to see how is this policy working, to ensure that those who this program are meant for, are they benefiting? So that is
Thank you.
where follow-up is necessary.
Thank you very much, Friday. We're now gonna try to go to Bandura. Kanisi, I see your hand up, Bandura. I would like to invite you to turn your microphone on and ask your question if you're ready, Bandura. Bandura has his hand up, but apparently not ready. Bandura? What about Nicholas? Nicholas, good. Your hand is up, but the microphone is off. Not available either. Let's try Al-Hayye Carker. Microphone. Okay, Al-Hayye.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vassin.
Okay, turn your camera on, please. Okay, all right.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Vassin. I'm Alhaji Ibrahim Akolka, a PhD student reading in humanities from Sierra Leone. I want to thank Friday very much for this insightful presentation from Nigeria, giving his perspective as a social worker. What I may like to know is the fact that, my colleague from Brazil said, I think in answer to the question from my colleague from Brazil, he said government has to come out with policy pronouncement and do follow up in terms of implementation. But what I'm interested in knowing is the fact that how will the government be able to garner funds to be able to support these vulnerable people that are affected by the pandemic? Thank you.
Okay, Friday.
Oh, okay. Governments of each country remains the government. It is the responsibility to provide for the needs of the society. So how they gather the fund, I don't want to bother myself with that. But one thing I am concerned about, government has responsibility to provide for the needs of the populace, and they have to do it. It is their constitutional responsibility. If they want to go and, I don't know. So whichever way, the most important thing, you are the government. You must provide for the needs of the society. Otherwise, you have failed as a government.
I understand your position, Friday, even though there is that catastrophic situation caused by the pandemic. It is the government's responsibility to address the issue and do the very best to manage the issue. I understand the caution that Friday took not to put himself involved in whatever government X, government Y, or government Z would be doing. It is their responsibility, contingent, of course, depending on the types of resources that the government has. So, but there is no way we can anticipate exactly, accurately, how the government is going to finalize any situation to protect and to provide to those people. Anyway, the social workers, again, the first group of people that we see in any process to address issues caused by the pandemic, which was the presentation of Friday Imoluamen. And we commend you very, very highly again for your performance. It was really outstanding. I don't know if anybody else has a question. I still see 3 hands up. Let's see if Emmanuel Oye Tunji is ready to ask a question to Samuel at this time.
Thank you, sir. I'm grateful. Mr. Friday, Dr. Friday, thank you so much, sir. I'm a brother from Nigeria and I'm proud of you. Now,
thank you, my brother.
Two questions, sir, or rather 3. I'll just make it short. The first one, you mentioned suicides is rampant among our youths. I'm sure you know it's coming up very well in Nigeria now. Do you have an organization? Have you been involved in any? How do you rescue our youth from this depression that takes them to suicide? That's the first question. The second question, I don't know if I would direct it to you or Dr. Franklin. A course came up for me on sustainable development goals. And I don't know how we can integrate the relevance of social work at this time now that we have the pandemic into the program. Do you have an idea if social work is a chunk in the Sustainable Development Goal 2030? That is the second question. I think I should just leave the third question because of our time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, we must understand that the youth, they are the future of any country. And there is need to pay absolute attention to the needs of this youth. If you don't pay attention to them, hey, please, there are some distraction. Okay, thank you, Dr. Franklin, for muting them. So, like I said, the youth are the future leaders. So, if you see the youth as future leaders, what do you need to do?
About Gilde, okay, there you go. Thank you.
Okay. So, there has to be an avenue where you link up with these youth constantly. I know there are various organizations that wholly dedicated to the problem solving for the youth. And the youth, what they need constant guidance, constant counseling, constant advice. And if this is missing, you see that they will continue to continue to do the wrong thing. Let me tell you this. Where the problem comes from is when they start mixing up with others who have bad characters. Before you know it, they are affected. But I know there are bodies in Nigeria whose responsibility is to ensure that they constantly engage these youth. Those who are into counseling and guidance, it is their responsibility to counsel the youth, to let them know that suicide is not the way out. It's because they don't understand. They feel that if there is problem today, that is the end of the world. That is not. They need people to tell them. So a social worker has to also collaborate with other, other health workers, other, humanity workers, and go into counseling these youths. I've had opportunity to counsel some people, and after the counseling, they change their, ideology. They change their minds. Their mindset were completely changed. They felt that there was no need, that this life is not worth living. But after the counseling, they changed, and today they are doing better. There are those who suffer rape. As a result of that, they felt that life is not worth living. But from experiences of those who have also, suffered such experience, they came on air, shared their experiences, told them this is what happened. And today I decide to move on. You that is undergoing or suffering that similar problem, there is hope for you. We need to talk with these youth regularly because they are very hyperactive. They want to do things in their own way. So it's our responsibility to guide them, to direct them to the proper way of life.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Friday Imoluamen. Your presentation again was an outstanding masterpiece. Everything that we've heard so far is very interesting, and we all have to learn from those critical standpoints and insights that we have with regard to opportunities out there during the pandemic, and particularly in the field of social work. The topic of the last presentation by Samuel, by Friday, not Samuel, sorry. With regard to a second point, the other attendee made in terms of a question to Dr. Friday, as far as the United Nations is concerned, and we are referring to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, goal for the year 2030. the question was whether social work is part of that. And my response is just go and look at any of these 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and you will see whether the word actually is mentioned or not. But you will see the clear connection with the sustainable goals. We could take something like zero poverty, for example. Well, to reduce poverty, of course, you certainly are thinking of the role of the government, the role of certain resources that we may have here and there, but also to the channel to move those resources is held by social workers. This was a critical point in Friday's presentation, that the social workers are indeed at the forefront of every movement being made to help out with the situation of the pandemic. So again, all the goals, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations are intertwined, connected, linked to each other, and there is no issue of human growth that you're not gonna see in those 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. Once again, thank you very much, Dr. Friday Imoluamen. Thank you very much for those of you who have joined us for this very important AIU Symposium 2021. And we want to believe, or we want to be confident that everybody is enjoying those presentations pretty much like I myself am enjoying them. Can you imagine that? You know, I have a very, very long experience in the field of education in general, but I have learned a lot today. I've learned a lot from Amida Unova, I've learned a lot from Dr. Renee, and I've learned a lot from the last presentation by Dr. Friday Imoluamen. And I want to believe that everybody else, every other attendee is fully enjoying those presentations. Thank you very much again, Dr. Friday, and I hope you will be with us for the remainder of this symposium. And thank you very much, sir. God fully bless you. Now I'm going to turn the floor